The marriage where she was never chosen. When I think about how it all began, I don't remember fireworks or grand promises. I remember calm, and for a long time, I mistook calm for love. He was confident, spoke with conviction, occupied spaces with ease, had ready opinions about almost everything. I, at that time, was the kind of woman who believed that loving meant not being trouble. I adjusted, I waited, I understood. I always understood. Our relationship wasn't intense. It was comfortable, at least for him. I remember smiling while he talked about himself, his plans, his work, the people who admired him. I listened with genuine attention. I found that enthusiasm beautiful. I thought that somehow that was also a form of love. Today, I know it was just emotional politeness on my part. Back then, I thought it was maturity. He liked to say I was easygoing. I never noticed that word always came with a silent relief, as if I didn't demand much from his life, as if I were easy to maintain. I laughed at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny, especially those. I thought it was affection. Later, I discovered it was habit. The proposal came without suspense. At a regular dinner on a regular day, with a simple phrase, "I think we work well together. We did work well." I organized the house. I remembered dates. I asked how his day had been. He arrived. He ate. He slept. For a long time, that seemed enough. I told myself that not all love needs to be loud, that some people show affection in silence, that maturity was accepting the other person's way. Funny how we call maturity everything that, deep down, is fear of losing. I was afraid of being too demanding, afraid of seeming needy, afraid of asking for something he wasn't willing to give. So I asked for less. Less and less. In the marriage, I became an expert at anticipating needs. I knew when he wanted silence, when he wanted conversation, when he just wanted someone there, available without difficult questions. I was very good at that, too good. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I would wake up and watch him sleep. I wondered if he knew who I really was, if he noticed how hard I worked to maintain that peace that only existed because I swallowed everything alone. But I quickly pushed those thoughts away. Thinking too much always seemed dangerous. There were small phrases, small gestures, nothing explicit, nothing that justified a complaint. "You're simple, that's good. I like how you don't complicate things. With you, everything is easier." I smiled. I always smiled. Today I understand that he liked what I offered, not exactly who I was. But back then, I still believed that love could also be learned, that maybe he was the type who feels slowly, that one day he would look at me the way I looked at him. Meanwhile, I took care. I waited. I diminished myself. The curious thing is that looking from the outside, it seemed like a good marriage. There were no screams, no obvious betrayals, no dramas that called attention. It was just empty, a polite emptiness. Sometimes, when I talked about something important to me, he would respond with a distracted "uh-huh." I would repeat the sentence. He wouldn't notice, so I gave up. At some point, I started talking more to myself than to him. And I confess, there was something almost comical about it. I would think of better responses hours later, alone, washing dishes, as if I were rehearsing dialogues that would never happen. I even laughed at that once. Alone. And then I stopped. I didn't want to get used to laughing alone too much. I believed that love could be silent. I just didn't know that silence, when it lasts too long, starts to erase us. And still, I stayed. Because staying seemed safer than going. Because I still believed that being chosen once was enough. I didn't know yet that I had been chosen not for love, but for convenience. The words that should never have been heard. It wasn't an argument. There was no yelling, no door slamming. It was worse. It was casual. I was in the hallway, going to get something I had forgotten. One of those small, forgetful moments that are part of the routine of someone who lives trying not to bother. His phone was on the table, on speaker. He was laughing. I recognized that laugh. It was the laugh he used with friends, a little louder, a little looser, the laugh of someone who feels validated. I stopped, not out of curiosity, out of instinct. I heard my name being mentioned. Then I heard something about marriage. And then, as if it were just an unimportant observation, he said, "I married her out of pity. No one else wanted her." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then laughter, scattered comments. The conversation continued, as if nothing had been revealed there. I stood motionless. The coffee cup grew cold in my hand. I felt its weight, but I couldn't put it down. I didn't feel like crying. I didn't feel immediate anger. I felt something much stranger, an emptiness that felt physical. My body reacted before my mind. My hands went cold, my stomach churned, the floor seemed distant, as if I were a few inches outside of myself. He kept talking, giving unnecessary details, explaining, justifying, feeling comfortable in that narrative where I was a favor. In that instant, I realized something cruel. That sentence hadn't been said to hurt me. It had been said because he believed it, because for him, it was just the truth being shared among equals. And that's what hurt the most. I went back to the bedroom in silence. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at my own hands, as if I were trying to recognize them. I thought about everything I had done, about all the times I stayed silent, about all the smiles I offered when I wanted rest. Funny how, in that moment, my mind tried to negotiate. Maybe he didn't mean exactly that. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I'm exaggerating. We always try to save what once saved us from loneliness, but something inside me knew with painful clarity. That sentence wasn't an isolated outburst. It was the translation of everything I had always felt and could never prove. He didn't see me as a choice. He saw me as a solution. When he entered the bedroom minutes later, he asked if I had heard anything. I said no. I smiled, a trained smile, almost automatic. He believed me. And in that instant, something changed forever. There was no confrontation, not that night, not in the following days. I continued doing what I always did, taking care of the house, maintaining the routine, being predictable. But now, each gesture came with a silent question. How much of me is still worth offering to someone who believes he did me a favor? I started observing more. The way he talked about me to others, the small corrections, the subtle interruptions, the decisions made without consulting me. It was all there all along. I just didn't want to see. At night, lying next to him, I thought about how that sentence had pierced something I couldn't name. It wasn't just love that had been wounded. It was my dignity. And for the first time, an idea that had always seemed unthinkable started to take shape. Maybe I hadn't been chosen, but that didn't mean I needed to keep choosing to stay. Funny, I spent years trying to be enough for someone, and one sentence was all it took for me to realize that maybe the problem was never me. That night, I didn't sleep well, but I didn't cry either. It was as if something was being prepared inside me, something silent, something final. The silent departure. After hearing that sentence, I didn't leave immediately. I stayed, not out of hope, but because I realized something cruel. I could continue there without being noticed. It was as if my presence no longer made a difference. The house kept functioning, the routines happened, he talked, ate, slept, everything exactly as before. I was there, and at the same time, I wasn't. It was in that silence that I began to remove what was mine. Not all at once, little by little. One day, some clothes. I folded them carefully, like someone who doesn't want to draw attention, even from their own gesture. I put them in an ordinary bag. I left to take care of something, and came back empty-handed. He didn't notice. The next day, some books, the ones that never interested him. I passed by him in the hallway. He asked something about work. I answered. I smiled. I left. He didn't notice. Then came small objects. My things. What made me someone in that space. Everything left in silence, as if I was saying goodbye to a place that never truly welcomed me. Funny, I spent years trying to be seen, and I just had to stop trying to disappear completely. The house remained large, impeccable, the way he wanted it. Without me, it still seemed sufficient. One night, I almost turned back. I looked at the packed suitcase and thought, what if I'm overreacting? I sat on the edge of the bed for half an hour, but then I remembered, not the sentence, the tone. That comfortable laugh. I stood up. I closed the suitcase. On the last day, I packed the final bag. There was no rush, no tears, just a strange sensation of completion. I looked around and realized that nothing there told my story anymore. He was home, sitting, distracted, stuck in something that wasn't me. I walked past him with the suitcase. He asked if I was going out. I said yes. It was the most honest answer I had given in years. I closed the door behind me without noise, without a scene, without announcement. And he didn't notice. Not at that moment, not that day. He would only notice later, when the smiles stopped existing, when the silent attention stopped filling the voids, when the large house started to seem too large. But in that moment I was already gone. Not because I left in a hurry, but because I left a place where I never truly was. When absence starts making noise. That night I didn't do anything different. I arrived home, took off my shoes, washed my face, sat on the couch in my old apartment and stayed there for a few minutes in silence. There was no rush, no one waiting. On the other side of the city, he was arriving home. There was no dinner ready. The kitchen was too clean, no familiar smell. He opened the cabinet. The shirts weren't in their usual place. The clothes he would wear the next day weren't folded, ironed, separated. He found it strange, not because he missed me, but because something wasn't working as it should. He looked at the clock, walked through the house, opened the fridge, closed it. Only then did he realize something simple and disconcerting. I wasn't there. The phone rang. I answered calmly, without surprise. "Where are you?" he asked, in a tone that mixed irritation and confusion. I looked around my small apartment. Everything in its place, everything silent, everything mine. "I'm doing you a favor," I replied. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" he asked, clearly not understanding. I took a deep breath, not with anger, with clarity. "I'm freeing you from the burden," I said. "From the burden of explaining to others that you married me out of pity, that no one else wanted me." Silence. This time, it wasn't comfortable. He tried to argue, said I was exaggerating, that it had been misinterpreted, that I was being dramatic. I listened to everything in silence. Then I responded with the calmness of someone who had already left inside a long time ago. "You didn't notice when I left little by little. Didn't notice when my things disappeared. Didn't notice when I stopped trying. So don't expect me to believe you notice now." He was speechless. And there, in that short call, without shouting, without accusations, something finally became clear to both of us, although for different reasons. He realized the house didn't work without me. I realized I never needed to be noticed to leave. I hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of the bed and smiled, a small smile, almost ironic. Funny, I thought. I spent years trying to be enough, and I just had to leave to become indispensable. But it didn't matter anymore, because for the first time I wasn't explaining my absence. I was living it. When the house became too big, after the call, he stood in the middle of the living room. He did nothing for a few seconds, as if his body was still waiting for some instruction that wouldn't come. Then he walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, empty. Not completely empty, enough to seem functional, but something was missing. My things were missing. The clothes that always occupied that side, the hangers he never knew exactly what they were for, but that now left a space too strange to be ignored. He frowned. He went to the kitchen, opened the upper cabinet, searched without knowing exactly for what. Only then did he realize my cup wasn't there. The one I loved using for coffee, the one he complained about, saying it was ugly, small, useless. It was always there, and now it wasn't. Curiously, he had never noticed how much that cup appeared in the mornings. He only noticed when it disappeared. He went to the bathroom, brushed his teeth mechanically, looked in the mirror. Only then did he notice something even simpler. And more disturbing, the other toothbrush wasn't there. It wasn't the first night without her, but it was the first night he noticed. He stood there holding his own toothbrush as if that were a detail too big to fit in such a small space. He returned to the living room, sat on the couch, looked around. The house was exactly as he liked it. Large, organized, silent, and for the first time, too large. It wasn't longing yet. It was discomfort. He began to remember things he had never valued, the easy smiles, the constant attention, the way I always noticed when something wasn't right, even when he said everything was fine. He realized too late that he never missed me while I was there. He missed the effect I had on his life, the dinner that appeared without being asked for, the clean clothes in the right place, the silent presence that made everything work, and in that instant, a simple truth imposed itself forcefully. I hadn't left that night. I had left a long time ago. Only now, surrounded by empty closets, absent cups, and a bathroom too silent, did he finally understand. Not because he loved me, but because he missed being taken care of. And that, somehow, hurt more than he was prepared to admit. The first nights alone, the first week in my old apartment was strange. Not bad, not good, just different. I woke up in the middle of the night several times, disoriented, reached for the other side of the bed and found only empty space. For a moment, panic, then relief. I was alone, truly alone, and that terrified me more than I wanted to admit. During the day, I kept busy, work, errands, small tasks that filled the hours. But at night, when the silence settled in, questions came. Did I do the right thing? Am I being too hasty? What if I regret this? I would sit on the couch with a cup of tea and look around. Everything was mine. The books on the shelf, the pictures on the wall, the way the cushions were arranged. Nothing was there to please someone else, and that freedom felt heavy. One night I cried, not for him, not even for the marriage. I cried for the version of me that believed she needed to be small to be loved. For all the years I spent asking for permission to exist fully, for the silence I accepted as love. I cried until there were no more tears, and then something shifted. The next morning, I woke up earlier, made coffee just the way I liked it. Strong, no sugar. Sat by the window and watched the city wake up. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone immediately, didn't worry if someone needed something, didn't plan my day around anyone else's schedule. I just was. Days passed. The apartment started feeling less temporary. I bought a plant, rearranged the furniture, hung a picture I had kept stored for years because he said it was too colorful. Small acts of reclaiming. Friends started calling. The ones I had slowly drifted away from during the marriage. At first I was embarrassed. What would I say? How would I explain? But they didn't ask for explanations. They just said, "We missed you." I met Sarah for coffee. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her life, her struggles, her victories, and then she asked about mine. I hesitated. Then I told her. Not everything, just enough. She didn't say, "I told you so." Didn't offer easy comfort. She just reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did the brave thing," she said. I wanted to argue, to say I didn't feel brave, that I felt lost and scared and unsure, but instead I just nodded, because maybe bravery isn't the absence of fear. Maybe it's leaving anyway. The apartment stopped feeling empty. It started feeling like mine. I would come home after work and feel my shoulders relax as I closed the door. No one to perform for, no one to placate, no one to disappear for, just me. And slowly, very slowly, that started to feel like enough. One evening, I cooked dinner for myself, set the table properly, lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, sat down alone, and for the first time, alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. I thought about him briefly. Wondered if he was eating properly, if he figured out how to work the washing machine, if he understood yet what he had lost. But the thoughts came without weight, without anger, without longing. He was becoming someone I used to know, and I was becoming someone I wanted to meet. When he tried to come back, 3 weeks after I left, the messages started. At first, they were practical. Where's the insurance paperwork? Do you have the plumber's number? The heating isn't working. I answered politely, briefly, then stopped answering altogether. Then came the different kind of messages. We should talk. I miss you. I made a mistake. I read them without feeling much of anything. It was like reading someone else's story. He showed up at my building one evening. The doorman called up. I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity won. He stood in my doorway looking smaller somehow. The confidence I once found attractive now seemed like pretense. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. We sat in the small living room. He looked around, seeming uncomfortable with how cozy it was, how complete it looked without him. "I've been thinking," he started. I waited. "About what I said. On the phone. It wasn't. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "How did you mean it then?" He struggled, shifted in his seat. "It was just talk. Guy talk. You know how it is. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to say it." Silence. "I want you to come home," he said finally. "That was never my home." "What?" "Of course it was. It's our home. Our marriage." I looked at him carefully, really looked at him. Tried to find something that would make me want to stay in this conversation. Found nothing. "You don't miss me," I said calmly. "You miss having someone who makes your life easier. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me one thing about me, one thing I love, one dream I have, one fear that keeps me up at night." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "You can't," I said, "because you never asked. In all those years, you never really asked." "I'm asking now. Now is too late." He tried a different approach, leaned forward, tried to take my hand. I pulled back gently. "We can start over," he said. "I'll be better. I'll pay more attention. You'll try for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then we'll fall back into the same pattern because you don't want a partner. You want a service provider." "That's not true, isn't it? Be honest. What did you miss most when I left? Me or the way I made your life work?" He couldn't answer. The silence stretched between us, wide and honest. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "I don't even blame you, really. You wanted what you wanted. You just never thought about what I wanted. And what do you want?" The question hung in the air. What did I want? I wanted to be seen, to be chosen deliberately, not settled for, to be someone's priority, not their convenience, to love without erasing myself, to be alone rather than lonely in company. "I want to be enough," I said, "just as I am, without shrinking, without performing, without proving my worth every single day. You were always enough." "Then why did you tell your friend you married me out of pity?" Direct hit. His face changed, guilt, shame, the realization that there was no good answer. That was wrong. I know that now. You know it because I left, not because it was wrong." He had no counter to that. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, not comfortable, not hostile, just final. "I should go," he said eventually. I walked him to the door. He paused at the threshold, turned back. "Is there really no chance?" I looked at him. This man I had loved, this man I had erased myself for, this man who never really saw me. "No," I said softly, "there isn't." He nodded slowly, seemed to age years in that moment. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said. "I already did," I replied. I found myself. He left. I closed the door, leaned against it for a moment, and felt nothing but relief. He tried a few more times over the following weeks. Phone calls I didn't answer, texts I didn't read, flowers I returned. Eventually he stopped, and I was grateful. Not because I hated him, but because I was finally truly free. When space becomes growth. While he tried to understand the emptiness of the house, my professional life began to gain a different rhythm. Nothing fell from the sky, nothing changed overnight. But something essential had happened. I had mental space, without the constant need to please, without the weight of sustaining a marriage where I was invisible. I started working with more presence. I began to concentrate better, to speak more firmly, to trust the decisions I used to always doubt. People started noticing. Not because I wanted to be seen, but because finally I was whole in what I did. New responsibilities came, discreet recognition, an invitation that might have gone unnoticed before, small achievements that, added together, began to change my routine and my security. It was there that I understood something simple. I wasn't prospering to prove anything to anyone. I was prospering because finally I had space to grow, space to think, space to make mistakes, space to decide without asking permission. And that silent growth, without witnesses, without applause, without the need for explanation, was what changed everything the most. Because while he was still trying to understand what he had lost, I was already too busy building what I never had. The signature that said everything I didn't need to say. The papers arrived on an ordinary morning. No special date, no provocation. Just a manila envelope, the kind that doesn't make noise, but changes destinies. When he opened it, it took him a few seconds to understand. He read once, then again, sat down, stood up, sat down again. Divorce. It wasn't a request, it was a decision. He called me almost immediately. His voice was different. It wasn't anger, nor clear sadness. It was confusion. "We need to talk," he said. I agreed. We arranged to meet in a neutral place, a simple cafe, nothing too symbolic. I didn't want to stage anything. When I arrived, he was already there, the papers folded on the table, as if still trying to reduce the size of it all. "Are you sure?" he asked. I looked at him calmly. I didn't need to think. "I am." He started talking about division, about rights, about things that didn't make sense to me. So I was clear. "I just need you to sign," I said, pushing the papers toward him. He looked at me, surprised. I explained calmly, almost didactically, not to convince him but to close things. The apartment we lived in was rented. The car he was still paying for. As for me, I already had my own space, paid for long before he existed in my life. My car was paid off, my independence too. "From you, I only want a signature." He was silent. Maybe he expected negotiation, maybe conflict, maybe for me to want something as compensation, revenge, advantage. But I wasn't there to win. I was there to close. "You're giving up everything?" he insisted. I thought for a second, not to answer, but to understand the weight of the question. "No," I replied. "I'm keeping everything that's mine." He signed, without drama, without speech. He just signed. When I put the papers back in the folder, I felt something unexpected. Lightness. Not euphoria, not noisy victory, just the feeling that something was finally in the right place. He tried to say something. I don't know exactly what. Maybe a belated request, maybe an explanation that no longer made a difference. I stood up before he finished. "Take care of yourself," I said politely. And I left, not because I won, but because I no longer needed to stay. She was never the woman no one wanted. For a long time, that sentence echoed inside me like a verdict. No one else wanted her. I repeated it silently, trying to understand where I had failed, what made me so easy to discard, so small that I could be chosen out of pity. It took time, but one day the sentence lost its power. Not because it stopped existing, but because I finally understood whom it belonged to. It wasn't about me. It was about someone who only saw value in what served him, who confused presence with obligation, who called love everything he never had to care for. I was never the woman no one wanted. I was the woman he didn't know how to want. That difference changed everything. Today, when I think about that house that was too large, the empty closets, the absent cup, I don't feel resentment. I feel clarity. I see clearly how much I erased myself trying to fit into a life that had no space for me. Funny, he said I was too simple, but it was simplicity that saved me. Returning to my small apartment was more than a change of address. It was a return to the version of me that existed before being diminished, before asking for less, before confusing silence with peace. I didn't need a new love to prove anything. I didn't need him to miss me. I didn't need anyone to validate my choice. All I needed was to leave. Today, my life is organized my way. My work flows, my days have rhythm, my silences are light, and my smiles now aren't offered out of habit but out of truth. Sometimes I think about him. I imagine if he learned anything, if he understood that losing someone isn't the same as being alone, that the cruelest emptiness isn't the absence of the other, but the absence of awareness, but that no longer belongs to me, because in the end, the greatest freedom wasn't leaving. It was stopping trying to be chosen. And if one day someone wants me, it will be completely, not out of pity, not out of convenience, but out of love. And you? Have you ever stayed somewhere where you had to erase yourself to fit? Leave it in the comments. I read them all. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about love, forgiveness, and second chances, because stories that touch the heart deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.